Hey solo gamers, thanks for checking out How's It Play Solo. I'm Kern, and today I'm taking a look at Havre, which is an economic worker placement game for 1 to 5 players. I'm going to take a look at the rules, and then I'm going to discuss how I feel about Havre as a one-player game. There are very few rules changes for the solo game, so I'm just going to try to point those out along the way. Let's take a look. In Havre, your goal is to gain as much wealth as possible. When you play the multiplayer game, you're trying to be wealthier than your opponents. When you play the solo game, you're simply trying to gather as much wealth as you can. And you'll do that through gathering and converting resources, shipping goods, and by constructing buildings. The game takes place over a set number of rounds that depends on the player count. I have the game set up for the solo long game. There's a long and a short game for every player count. So the solo long game lasts for 7 rounds. I'll take a moment to go over the variable aspects of Havre's setup, since that's something that's important to a lot of solo players. In every game, you use these 7 supply tiles, but the order that these are placed in is randomly determined at the beginning of the game. And I'll talk more about these in a second, but basically, the order that these tiles are placed in affects when certain resources are restocked over the course of the game. You also have buildings that are available over the course of the game, and different buildings are used for different player counts. So the same buildings are always going to be used in the solo game, but the order in which those buildings become available will change from game to game. And the way that that happens is you shuffle all of the buildings for the player count you're using, and you divide those into 3 equal piles, and then there's a building ranking value in the upper right hand corner, and you arrange that pile in ascending order, and you have 3 piles of buildings at the start of every game. So there's always going to be some buildings that are available towards the beginning of the game, and there's some buildings that are always going to be available towards the end of the game, but the exact order in which those buildings appear can change quite a bit from game to game. Finally, you use 6 special buildings in each game, and these come from a selection of, I think, close to 30 buildings. So there's a lot of variability in here. Now, of the 6 special buildings, maybe 3 of these will actually be constructed over the course of the game. I'll talk more about that later, but some of these buildings are pretty powerful and can definitely change the course of the game. So there is a little bit of variability in the setup to keep the game from playing the same every time you play. In Havre, there are 2 parts to every turn. In the first part of your turn, you will place your boat piece on the next available supply tile. Now, at the beginning of the game, these are all face down. After they've been revealed, and you reveal them when you place your boat on them, after they've been revealed, they stay face up and in the same position for the rest of the game. So it's only a surprise during that first round of the game what order these are going to be in. So I place my boat on this tile, and then I restock the corresponding goods. So when I put my boat on this tile, I add 1 fish to the fish offer and 1 clay to the clay offer. After I have taken the supply action, which you have to do every turn, you're going to be taking that supply action. And after that, I have 2 options for a main action. I can either take all of the goods available in one of these offers, or I can use my worker to visit a building. At the beginning of the game, there are 3 buildings in play. These buildings are owned by the city, and they're available for anyone to use. 2 of these 3 buildings have an entry cost in the upper right-hand corner. So when these buildings are owned by the city or by another player, which I'll talk about later, you have to pay an entry fee to use them. So if I want to use this building firm right here, I can do that, but I have to pay 1 food to do so. Now, you'll notice that all 3 of these buildings that are available at the beginning of the game allow you to build additional buildings. And so the buildings that I'm able to build at the beginning of the game are the 3 buildings on the top of the building piles that I laid out when I set the game up. And if I want to build one of these buildings, I have to take an action that lets me build something, and I have to have the required resources to build that building. So if I have 2 wood, I can go to the construction firm or one of the building firms, and I can build the marketplace. When I do that, I'm going to place this card in front of me, and owning this building doesn't keep others from using it, but when other people want to use this building by placing their worker there, they have to pay me either 2 food or 1 coin. And you don't have to pay that entry fee to use your own buildings. Once you own this building, you're able to use it without paying that cost. One thing that's different in Le Havre than in a lot of worker placement games is that if you are in a building and you want to, in a subsequent turn, take the goods on one of these offers, your worker stays in that building. So if you're playing with other people, when you are in a building and you take goods on these offers, you kind of keep on blocking the use of this building. Another thing that's important is that if you want to use your main action to visit a building, you can't visit the building that you're already in. So basically, I can't take, generally, I can't take the marketplace action in 2 subsequent turns because I have to first leave this building to visit another building, and then I'm able to come back and visit the marketplace. In addition to restocking goods with the supply and taking a main action to either gather goods or visit a building, I'm also allowed to buy and sell buildings at any point during my turn. So for example, if I own the marketplace has a value of 6 coins, I can sell that to make 3 coins, and this building just goes to the city. So I no longer own it, but it's still available for everyone to use by paying the entry cost. And one thing that I should note is that if I or anyone else is in this building when I sell it, anytime a building gets sold, whoever occupies that building has their worker marker returned to them. So maybe at the beginning of my turn, I'm occupying the marketplace, but then I sell it for 3 coins, and I'm able to use that marketplace again because I'm not currently occupying it. Alternately, I can buy any of these buildings that are on the top of the building piles, or any building that currently belongs to the city, I'm able to buy by paying the full value for. So if I want to purchase the construction firm, I can do that by paying 8 coins. Again, if someone is in this building, I can buy the building and kick their worker out, and then I'm able to use it without paying the entry cost. The one big restriction to that rule is that I'm not allowed to buy and sell the same building in the same turn. So if I own the construction firm at the beginning of my turn, I can't sell it and then buy it back. I would have to wait for a subsequent turn to do that. A lot of the game's buildings allow you to convert resources. So every resource has a basic and an upgraded side. And so the charcoal kiln would let me upgrade any number of wood to charcoal. And I will pause right here to talk about energy. 1 unit of wood can be used as 1 energy, and energy is just something that you have to pay to convert resources sometimes. Sometimes when you build things, you have to pay energy. Wood is worth 1 energy. But if I use the charcoal kiln to convert it to charcoal, it's now worth 3 energy. Coal and coke are also worth energy. Coal is worth 3 energy. You can use buildings to convert it to coke, and then it is worth 10 energy. There's a similar resource upgrade that goes on with different items. So the fish are worth 1 unit of food, and if you use a building to upgrade them to smoked fish, they're worth 2 food. You've also got cattle and grain, which are not worth any food on their own, but if you use buildings to upgrade them, they become worth 2 and 3 food. Clay and iron are unique in that when you upgrade them to their advanced side, they can still be used as the basic resource. So brick can always be used as clay, steel can always be used as iron, but it doesn't work the other way around, and you'll need brick and steel for your more powerful buildings and ships later on in the game. Every round lasts for exactly 7 actions. So after the 7th action of the round, a couple different things happen, and they're all outlined on these cards, which are arranged according to player count at the beginning of the game. After some rounds, you have a harvest, During harvest, if you have one or more grain, you get another grain. If you have two or more cattle, you get another cattle. You also have to pay a certain amount of food, and this is based on player count, and it increases over the course of the game. So after the first round, I have to pay 5 food to feed my workers. Now, I already showed that food is listed on some of your goods, and also in this game, 1 coin can be used as 1 food at any point in time. Now, if I can't afford this 5 food through the food resources or through coins, I have to take out a loan. And this is the only way that I can take a loan. But loans grant you an immediate 4 coins that you can use to pay for food. But if you have like a residual, so maybe I am only missing 1 food, I still take a loan. I pay 1 coin for that food, and then I have 3 extra coins. Now, if I don't pay this off before the end of the game, it's going to be worth -7 coins at the end of the game. However, I can spend 5 coins to get rid of this loan. Another thing I should mention about loans real quick is that there's one supply space that has the word interest written on it. And so when someone's boat lands on this interest spot, anyone that has any loans has to pay 1 coin. It doesn't matter if you have 1 loan or 14. You always pay 1 coin as interest when that spot is landed on. At the end of some rounds, the city constructs a building. If it has an anchor on it, that means that the city is going to build the top card in the special building pile. If it doesn't have an anchor, it's just going to take the lowest ranked card from the top of the 3 building piles, and it's going to construct that building. Finally, this end of the round card is going to be flipped over, and it's going to turn into a ship that's available to build or buy. You can only build ships once someone has bought or constructed the wharf, and so by going there, you pay the costs of the ship, and you construct it just like you would construct a building. Later in the game, the ships get nicer, so you start out with wooden ships, but then iron ships become available, steel ships become available. The first person that builds a ship besides a wooden ship has to place a brick on this wharf to modernize the wharf. Additionally, you can just buy the ships like you would buy a building. But one thing that's interesting about the ships, and some buildings are like this too, is that the cost to buy is not the same as the value. So this is only worth 2. If you sell something with this value, you'd only get 1 coin. But if you want to purchase it, it costs 14 to buy. And ships have a couple different benefits. One of them is that they reduce the amount of food you have to pay at the end of the round. So in the solo game, the wooden ship reduces my food payment by 5 at the end of every round. The other cool thing about ships is that there is a card called the shipping line that allows you to sell goods with your ships. So you pay 3 energy for every ship you want to use. Let's say I have 1 wooden ship built. I can use the shipping line, I pay 3 energy, and then I can ship 2 goods with this ship. So maybe I sell a cattle for 3 coins and bread for 3 coins. I make a profit of 6 coins. And this is one of the big ways that you'll earn a lot of money throughout the game. Once you have a lot of ships, you can use the shipping line. As long as you have the energy, you can ship a whole bunch of goods and just convert those directly to money. Once you reveal the last ship, so when you flip over the last end of the round card in the game, each player gets 1 additional action. And what's cool about that is that you're allowed to use a building that someone else has occupied. So maybe the shipping line is in high demand, someone's already in there. They can't block the use of the shipping line by being in that building. The restriction that you're not allowed to use a building that you're already occupying still carries over though. So you have to be careful if you want to use the shipping line for your final action of the game. You don't want to be in that building at the start of the final action. And at the end of the game, your score is the number of coins you have plus the value of all of the buildings and ships you have, and then some buildings might grant you additional coins based on other buildings that you've constructed over the course of the game. There's one standard building card that has an additional rule restriction in the solo game, and so the marketplace It gives you 2 different goods, and then you get an additional different good for every one of these little house icons you have on buildings that you own. In the solo game, this caps out at providing 4 total different goods each time you use it. In the multiplayer game, the marketplace can easily be used to get 5 or 6 different goods. So the restriction in the solo game to keep you from using this building too often is that you can only get 4 goods from that building. I've really been enjoying Le Havre, and I was pleasantly surprised to find out how much I like it as a solo game. It definitely plays differently when you don't have to compete for resources or prime buildings, but it's still a pretty satisfying experience. I think that the timing of the buildings coming out, the way that changes, keeps things tense and a little unpredictable from game to game. And I think also in the solo game, you're required to pay more food per round than in the other player counts, and I think that keeps things tense as well. So I've had a lot of fun with it. It's a pretty difficult game, and I think that learning curve being pretty high has kept the game fresh for me. I'm still not very good at the game. I still don't really have it 100% figured out, and so there's a pretty high skill ceiling, and I feel like I have a lot of room to improve, which keeps me coming back to it. Now, once you get really good at the game, the replayability might be limited. And that brings me to my main complaints about Le Havre as a solo game. And number 1 is that you use the same buildings every time you play the full-length solo game. You're using those same buildings. Or if you want to play the short solo game, you still have a set of buildings that's going to be the same every time you play that short solo game. And I do think that they did a pretty good job of changing the order that those buildings come out in, but eventually you're going to start seeing the key buildings, and if you want to fall into pursuing the same strategy every game, you'll kind of be able to do that. The special buildings, I think it's great that there's a huge variety of those, but I wish they had a bigger impact on the game. Some of them are pretty powerful and will change the course of your strategy, but a lot of the time they don't have as big of a role as I wish they did. And so I wish that there was a little bit more variety, but for now I've been super happy with it, and I plan on continuing to play Le Havre solo for quite a long time. If it's a game that you're interested in and you think that you can play it with a group, I definitely think it's worth pursuing, and you should definitely check out the solo option. I purchased Le Havre knowing that I would mainly get it played solo, and right now I'm pretty happy with that decision. So if Le Havre interests you, I definitely think you should check it out.